We're absolutely delighted to be here with you today. I wanted to open this up to being a bit of a networking event as well, because we're missing each other in person. So feel free to put your name and your company name and your expertise in the chat so that people know who you are and that you're here. So again, welcome. We will be taking questions after this expert panel. And so if you have them along the way, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Okay, we'll get to them, we promise, as best as we can at the end, or if it works in along the way. And a huge thank you to ACG San Francisco, Tyler, who introduced us. Thank you so much for hosting us. Also, thank you to ACG Silicon Valley and Yvonne and the team, and ACG New York and Vic and the team. It's really gracious for you to host us today and this conversation. So I am really excited about this conversation. I have this incredible panel of expert business builders. They're masters in growth and turnarounds and value creation for businesses, and just super deeply knowledgeable about digital transformation. So I am joined today by Gerson Guzman, Paul White, and Cesar DOnofrio. Sorry, Cesar. I do my best with pronunciation.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do is just invite each of you to introduce yourselves. Take 2 or 3 minutes and tell us about your backgrounds and also relate it to your digital transformation journey, your expertise and depth there. Gerson, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you very much. Do let me know if there's any audio issues. We are all experienced hands at these Zoom webinars now. But by way of background, I've spent nearly 2 decades as a principal investor or advisor to businesses with a focus on creating value-added business models. I've always been fascinated with technology. Paul and I, when we were getting ready for this panel, traded some notes, and I think I'll geek out a little bit because I've always had an intuitive appreciation for the logic of computing, starting with building my own computers as a first job as a young kid, and ultimately working at the help desk of a major film studio. I then, after college, moved on with a formal career at a Baby Bell as a manager in the network operations group there, and then moved on to a major consultancy working in the communications and informations group there. Transitioning into my career in private equity, I was a partner for many years, focused on a number of lower middle market opportunities, and then worked as an interim CFO of a dark fiber build out, as well as being on the board of a tech implementation firm. Within private equity, I have often led the implementation of technology initiatives within our portfolio companies. My partner at Saba brings a deep understanding of digital marketing and a programmatic approach to customer acquisition. I guess for us, we really take it as a strategic approach and have a deep understanding of how technology and innovation can create equity value. And so when we launched our platform, that was core to the strategy. So as we look to opportunities, our approach is how can we create post-closing equity value through tech enablement and digital adaptation of lower middle market companies with a buy and build focus, in addition to following the established PE playbook. So just a quick snapshot of the background there, and happy to hand the mic over back to you.
Great, thank you, Gerson. By the way, everyone, we're keeping it mics open. We're not putting ourselves on mute, so excuse us if a dog barks or what have you, but we want this to be a free-flowing conversation. Paul, would you like to take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I similarly have, in my case, a multi-decade background in technology. I actually worked with the inventor of Ethernet, Bob Metcalf, in pioneering network servers back in the day at 3Com. But have leveraged and cultivated and enriched the technology experience that I've had in multiple positions, consulting with Bain & Company, but also running multiple companies, doing turnarounds. And generally they are technology-based companies, or we bring technology in to enable the improvement and acceleration of growth in those companies. Now, more recently, maybe the last 10 years, we've been bringing all of that together in a company called Muir Equity, which I run today. And the objective of Muir Equity is ultimately to maximize the value of the owner's equity, the stock value of the company. And we do that in a couple of ways. Number one, bringing in capital partners and co-investing to allow that owner or those owners to take some chips off the table and de-risk their financial situation, but also then to work very intensively with them to increase the value of the company. And often that involves strategic transformation, certainly some type of strategic change or improvement. And it often involves digital transformation, or at least significant digital change. And for us, that can happen in a couple of ways. It can be transforming a product line or introducing a new digital product line, or it can include simply using technology more effectively in operations to improve the operations. And the whole aim of these kinds of projects is not only to accelerate the growth of the business, but to maximize the valuation of the business, over that 5+ year process. So we'll give some examples of some of these projects as we go through this seminar.
So looking forward to jumping in on those. Yeah, that'll be great. Such impressive backgrounds that you both have, and as private equity executives, in our previous conversations, I just really appreciated the passion that you bring to each project. So everyone's going to be able to benefit from that, hearing about some of those stories during this talk. Cesar, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So yeah, I am one of the co-founders and CEO of Making Sense. We are a software development and user experience service company. And we are working today mostly on digital transformation project and software product development. So my story started, well, I have a technical background. I started as a software developer in the mid-90s, but I found my passion in the early 2000s, working as a consultant for a software company in San Antonio, Texas. I was part of a pre-sales team where we put together proposals for potential new clients. So what I found is that, my peers, software developers and architects, they will focus on only putting together, a diagram of a software component, and that, we will be presenting the proposals on that way to our potential new clients. So what I did in that moment, I put together, prototypes or visual prototypes of what the application it would look like. And I saw many times, faces of our new potential customers or clients, that their eyes were blinking when they saw the click-through prototypes of, those proposals, because it was a proposal. So, and I found my passion at that time when mixing, software development with in that time it was a visual design, but user experience when it was not the term in the early 2000s. So I have been doing that for the last 20 years. And in 2006, we put together what today is Making Sense, and we do that. We do software development and user experience services. We work a lot on digital transformation. We have clients, from startups that already, have market fit. Usually is after Series B. We are working a lot with portfolio companies of private equities, helping them to build software products or digital transformation projects. So
wonderful.
That's it.
Great, fantastic. And I know that you work very often with private equity executives, like in Paul and Gerson on jumping in at different stages of the process.
And it's everything is about, how we can add value. We don't want to build software just for the idea to build something. We would like to make sure how we can add equity value to the company.
Yeah,
we like to work with Making Sense because they bring such a customer-focused strategic mindset before they even get started on programming, software and technology solutions. So we'll talk about it later, but it's important to bring in good partners like Making Sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I heard all of you chime in and speak to the customer experience and being very customer centric and also via Cesar, design centric. So it'll be, I'll want to jump into that and dig into that a little bit. And I just wanted to say hello as well. My name is Nicole DeMeo. I am a co-founder of Outfront Solutions along with my business partner, Janine Moss. And we are a marketing consultancy focused on branding, marketing, business development, and international expansion. And digital transformation and technology are a big part of what we do. We end up being translators a lot of times, translating technology into terms that other business folks or our audiences need to understand. And I have been very fortunate to have grown up in the Silicon Valley, working with people like Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs at Next and Apple, and with a lot of the big technology consultancies, Accenture, Booz, whatnot. And so I'm a geek alongside of these gentlemen, and we look forward to digging in. So let's jump in and speak about at what point in the investment life cycle do you think a company or private equity firm and or this partnership, say with Making Sense, to identify the different technology opportunities among implementation, digital transformation. So at what point in the investment life cycle does it make sense to jump in? As soon as diligence, when you're halfway in the discovery process, what makes sense? Paul, do you want to lead us off here?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure Gerson has a good opinion on this as well. I mean, as he and I have talked about before, it's critical to understand before you dive into an investment. We do a lot of work in the lower middle market, and frankly, lower middle market investors tend to prefer little to no risk and sustainability of the company first. And then if you can grow the business, then that's a nice to have. But everyone does enjoy additional equity return, and you need to understand what are the possibilities going in. And number one, just understand what the company has already deployed, and if the investor just adds fuel to that flywheel, how much can it grow? But it's important to understand it and to understand what else is possible before you make the investment. Now, having said that, companies we've worked with have gone through multiple waves of technology adaptation and in some cases digitization. And so you always have to keep your eye on the market and understand customer needs and what's available technologically to see if you can continue to augment or further augment, what you've started initially.
Yeah, Gerson?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I mean, it's funny because it used to be that whenever I mentioned technology within the context of alternative investments, everyone in the room immediately used to assume I was trying to be a venture capitalist or working at a startup, right? Yeah. And the reality, to echo Paul, is you've seen waves of technology happening out there, whether it was the adoption of computers and desktops to networking, and then post.com, as everyone started thinking about how to utilize broadband within their business. We've definitely seen an acceleration of technology adoption thanks to the pandemic. But it's not just about how do I enable my business to operate and work remotely. At Ceba, with our approach is really we start thinking about it upfront from the moment we review the SIM and have initial discussions on the opportunity. We ask ourselves, what's the value creation lever here? Where is the industry going? What are some of the other players in the space doing?
Yeah.
And this goes beyond just the simple private equity playbook. And Paul knows this, right? How do you move from QuickBooks to a finance and accounting package, or what used to be the mother of all implementations, which was, ooh, it needs an ERP. Now you're thinking about things like user interface, service delivery. And, I don't talk about the customer experience. I talk about the user experience, because within the context of technology implementation and digital adaptation, the user may be a customer. Oftentimes it's your workforce. Many times it's your supplier base. And so you really have to consider that up front as you're evaluating it. Now, in a traditional sort of non-focused strategy like what we're pursuing, I would always advise that you start thinking about these levers during the diligence phase. And it's always hard because the seller's guarded, the workforce is scared. Who are these guys coming in from the coast? So they don't really open up immediately. You've got to get them a bit warmed up, but it is your duty as the transaction team to start putting together a list of where there may be some levers and opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a bit, I'm sure, and then figure out, okay, at what point do you bring in that trusted advisor to really drive the process? Because we're investors, not coders.
Yeah.
I would just add one thing to that. I mean, and Gerson and I are just in the very early stages of trying to talk about one such opportunity, but sometimes the driver that, that compels interest by the investor in the opportunity is the opportunity to increase value substantially or get a sustainable company into a new market segment by the use of technology that they're just not very familiar with. So often we will see opportunities, companies where we understand how that business can be changed and improved and vastly increased, not only in revenue and EBITDA, but in the valuation. We're talking about a situation where a company might be valued at 5 times earnings. And with what we're talking about, it could grow so much faster, be so much more profitable, but be valued at more like 10 times earnings. So it could be transformational in terms of the stock value to the owners.
As you're building out these digital assets and Cesar, you probably jump in alongside of private equity execs in this diligence process and whatnot. When do you jump in?
Well, again, it could be at any stage, either like, at the due diligence stage, or, when the private equity already, bought the company. We have, different cases. What I would like to highlight is our discovery process. So when we, in our framework, when we build a software product or project, we divide in 3 phases. The first phase is the discovery phase that I will be providing more details in a few seconds. The second phase is the execution, that is building the 1.0 version of the MVP, the minimum valuable product. And then we have, the third phase that is, adding more features to go on with support. The first phase, that is the discovery phase, is a very short engagement, is something between 2 weeks to 4-6 weeks maximum. So on that phase, we put together, our UX designers, our software architects, our business people, and we analyze, what is the potential. For example, at the discovery phase, we can help the private equity to show them what technology can do. Hey, we can add this efficiency, or we can build a software component that it could be nationwide. We can open, schedule adding features to make the software available worldwide. So I think that in the discovery phase, and it could be it could be at the due diligence, and also when we are in the middle, and we have an example that I would like to share later, when we are we in the middle of the private equity owning that company, we are the discovery phase, and we are the digital transformation later on. So
that's great. Yeah, it's all a matter of, where and when to jump in. And when we're not just talking about technology first companies here. We're talking about, it could be across any industry, right? It could be application modernization. It could be, you know, making processes more efficient. So that's what I'm looking forward to in kind of highlighting a few examples. So can each of you jump in and share an example of the use of a digital transformation project, and you know, and what is a good example of a project that has been successful? And if you can, also share some things that maybe went sideways or didn't work as well. So those are great insights too.
So maybe I can start, and then we can have a Paul and Gerson too. I would like to have their feedback on what I'm saying. So I think, again, like in the middle of the transactions, we are working, and we started last year a work for the company is a portfolio company owned by a private equity, provide legal services. So scheduling, arbitrations, mediations, they put together both sides, they do the scheduling and all the protocol that is around, you know, that legal services. Mm-hmm. With the pandemic last year, they were not able to do anything. So no people can get, you know, face-to-face, you know, for those meetings.
Depositions and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they contact us, they say, hey, how we can fix this? So we did our discovery phase, and we put together a plan to create all those meetings virtually. So, you know, there are some complexities like scheduling features, like the translation of those meetings, reports, and all the details. So we completed that project a couple of months ago. We are working the new features, but again, it was a company that, you know, was owned by the private equity, was providing, you know, a service that it was not available to do anymore in person. So they convert the company to be virtually. And in a step of providing that service, you know, locally, they open nationwide right now, so that service, it could be available. So I think that the value creation in that case, it was good. I don't know, what do you think, Paul and Gerson, about you know, that example?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I've heard of this example before, and to me, it's just a perfect example of using technology to completely transform your business and ultimately the entire market. Because once you go digital like this, you begin to learn what else can be done. And now you're not just serving a local market, you can be serving an international market. And so the market size expands greatly. You're able to operate much, much more efficiently. Your business is more stable and sustainable over the long run. It has massively higher growth potential.
And so, leading an industry, you know, leading the industry and, you know, doing these online meetings, depositions, what have you. It's a game changer. And now absolutely everyone needs to do it across industry, geographies, what have you.
Yeah, I'll just, I'll jump in here, and a part of your question was around sort of what, you know, what goes wrong. I don't think I've ever been involved in a digital initiative or a tech implementation where something didn't go wrong.
Yes.
And that's something where I want to comment on, that nothing ever goes according to plan. Things are going to run over budget. There's going to be hiccups along the way, and you really have to have conviction. You have to stay the course. We led, and I'll ask for a little bit of understanding as I can't get into particulars due to confidentiality reasons, but we led a technology integration of two businesses during what was a transition of a business model. And we had, during that IT integration, twice the volume of customer calls with double the duration to resolve the issues. That put incredible strain on the staff, and it challenged customer patience on these initiatives. But, you know, and credit to the management team, the CEO in particular, for staying the course and having transparent communications with the workforce as to the direction the business was going in, and doing right by the customer ultimately, right? Because if things get fumbled during that integration, you have to stand behind the product or service. But ultimately, notwithstanding what was a half year of pain as we were going through that, in particular during the busy holiday shopping season, completely transformed the business. And to Paul's point earlier, we were looking at a business that had been acquired in the low mid single digits. And when we went to sell that business, kind of the sum of the parts analysis revealed that we have really generated significant multiple accretion because we had moved into a far more efficient payment processing model. So again, I think it's important to just remain committed and recognize you're going to hit these hiccups, but you need to communicate to your team the direction that you're taking the business in.
Yeah, thanks for being honest and real about that. Absolutely. There are always somehow delays or integrations or things that come up. And so staying nimble.
Yeah, the overall problem that we saw, I will say the problem and also the solution that we found from our side is that usually when you build software, a digital transformation project with different features, is the rule of 80-20. So you build like 100 features, but people only use like 20% of those features. So you are wasting resources, and so that is maybe it's not an efficient way to do it. So on that discovery phase that I mentioned earlier, we try to focus, and we are using also other methodologies like design thinking and lean startup methodology to making sure that we build, what is important for users. So I think that is a very common problem when you are building, a software product, is that you build like too much. And we need to be, really careful using the resources that we have.
Yeah, and I can give similar examples.
Please.
One that comes to mind, it just reminds me of the importance of understanding how customers, what their needs are, and then how they will use technology or not use technology. At the end of the day, I think the more you can wrap it up and put it on as a complete solution on their plate, easy to understand and easy to use, you're going to be more successful. We had a company a while back. It was a real tech-enabled security services company, and they did all sorts of cool stuff, gathered all kinds of information on the services provided and the incidents that they found in places like apartment complexes. And they had all this information in this portal for the customers that they could really understand, and it could really help them drive behavior, even down to fixing a water leak. But almost no one went into this portal and used that information. I mean, literally almost no one. And so, the lesson out of that was we could do something as simple as creating automated reports to different people. So right when you start them as a customer, have them sign up and say, okay, I want to learn about, when a car is stolen, send me an email, or, certain reports to the regional managers, local managers, and so forth. And it just shows up. They don't even know that they should be looking at it. It just shows up. And so that was, an enormous insight, and turned out to be quite valuable. Sort of a flip side example of that is the company we're working with, and we've gone through multiple waves with this company too, taking it from really kind of a systems integrator to a provider of services in a very unique way that allows them to do all sorts of testing and so forth, which really is kind of a digital operation, better than anyone else before deploying the networks in the field, to then first buying a company, but then kind of transforming that software to where it could really sort of orchestrate networks globally for companies. But it was such a grand vision, and I think we'll eventually get there. But the immediate need that we saw was just to automate the basic services of running these data transport networks in a way that they just weren't able to do today. And without going into the details of it, what we've done is created this really nice user interface that really serves as a platform that other people could actually write applications on. It can be delivered via, to mobile phones and so forth. And so it just dramatically automates and makes more efficient the whole provisioning and service process for running these vast, global, complicated networks. So it all starts with understanding customer needs and delivering what is best to address those needs.
Yeah, realizing what those customer, taking that customer / user, to your point, Gerson, because it could be anyone, depending on audiences and stakeholders, it can make all the differences to whether or not you realize the ROI and if you actually are able to scale and whatnot, because they have to use it. And they have to be able to engage with it.
Right.
And so it points back to, the importance of design being an early part of the process so that you're de-risking your digital technology and transformation, implementations. So I think it's
Nicole,
exciting. Gerson, go ahead.
On the point of design, right? Because UX is not UI. And it's not simply about the user interface. It is about that user experience. And I talked earlier about the term user and the user being vendors or employees. And there was an instance, which I think is relevant to this conversation. We completed within the healthcare space an EMR conversion for a healthcare business. It was a transition from a legacy platform to a new one. And in that instance, we had to recognize that it was the clinical field force that was going to be transitioning to that platform, right? Mm-hmm. The sick patient is sick, the nurse is visiting. It is going to be the nurse, the physical therapist that uses that platform. And we needed to get the buy-in and make sure that they were going to use this platform and not have it, to Paul's point, being so feature rich that at the end of the day, a nurse is worried about everything else this thing can do rather than putting their hands on the patient and capturing the necessary information to drive clinical delivery, improved outcomes. But for the business, it was ultimately about how best to process the orders and collections and improve that free cash flow conversion as they were submitting the billing to the private and public payers. So UX design is incredibly important, and you have to take the context and understand how the user is ultimately going to be applying the technology to his or her day-to-day job.
Yeah, well, another case that I usually would like to highlight about user experience is, I think that we all have been using, like many years ago, like Expedia or Travelocity to book our flights. And then I don't know if you use it, but it was very popular, a product named Hitmonks, that it was
Hitmonk.
Yeah. So it was very visual. So you type your flight and or your original front and to, and you are able to visualize all the different options. It was very nice. But then today we have Google Flights that you receive, the result instantly. So, the value is that Google right now is eating all the booking fees and the value that Travelocity and Expedia, they were able to collect like years ago. So, and that is user experience. So Google Flight is doing something really smart. And for me, that is a great example how user experience can add, value to companies. And another great example is Amazon. I think that many of us, if we need to buy something, we just go directly to our mobile app on Amazon and buy something. Because of what? Because it's very easy, it's very convenient. The user experience is fantastic. So I think that those are great examples of how user experience, can add value to software product or to technology.
Yeah, getting people engaged is the key, and in B2B scenarios as well, which I know you all know a lot about. Let's just kind of touch on the pandemic and the massive ways that the pandemic has altered the way that companies and private equity firms are thinking about technology and digital transformation. What's exciting about this, and what's happening? What are some trends also that you could point to? Gerson, you look like you have an answer to that.
I don't know if I have an answer. I mean, we're all sitting, in front of our computer today in one of the biggest ways that the pandemic has altered what we're doing. I think as I take a step back, yeah, there's been an acceleration of technology adoption. I think there's been a cultural shift to recognizing that, yes, people could work from home, and socially, I think that'll inure to some benefits at the end of the day. I do think we're going to see more hybrid business models take place as a result, whether it is with a dispersed workforce or service and product delivery. I am, however, a bit cautious and concerned because I think we as investors often become myopic and ask ourselves, okay, how does this business survive the last tragedy? We lived through it with the .com, the Great Recession, housing crisis. Now it's the pandemic. And the thing we always fail to realize is that all of those black swan events should have just taught us that the next bird is going to be of a different breed, right? Okay. Those things all had something systemic that impacted businesses, but the next one was very different. And so we need to ultimately figure out, within the context of digital adaptation and transformation, how do we define business models that are going to be resilient to the next external shock? And how do we think about near-term adapting our business model to the challenges that pandemic has driven, which is a increase in labor inputs and material prices. Certain categories, it's going to be a while before we get back to normal. But ultimately, long-term, how do we think about, product and service delivery and revenue growth in a potential near term where we're constantly talking about, the next variant or potential, rolling shutdowns as well. So these are all the things that we as investors need to keep top of mind.
Yeah.
I can give some examples too. I think, for some companies we work with, number one, customers, basically everyone in the ecosystem of the business has become more comfortable communicating remotely. Whereas, for example, on the sales side, if it was totally reliant on face-to-face communication, now they're much, more readily, the customers are much more readily accepting calls via, some remote communication device or solution. So that just simply saves money. So we're not spending nearly as much on travel, which allows us to take that money and put it into another part of the business, improving technology, for example. The other part is on the product side where, some services, just support services, for example, that were oftentimes delivered in person, even like training, for example, can be done remotely. But also, for one of the ed tech companies we're working with, a lot of the communication was done, for example, by mailing out physical letters for certain required communications. And that can be much more effective, but the reality is, for the vast majority of the people they want to communicate with, the parents and families and students, it can be done via a digital means, text or email, for example, and not only dramatically reduce the cost of delivering that communication, but then opening them up to a much more robust technology and solution where the parents can then come in and look at what's going on specifically around their student, comparing that student to others, and to show kind of the promise of what can happen, what improvements, how their child can be impacted and helped. It just opens up a whole new world of technologies. And in fact, this is one we're trying to bring Making Sense into as well. So, the technology team there is a great team. They're expert in what they're doing, but there's a lot more now that can be done, which frankly was really sparked by the pandemic. And so we're hoping to kind of now take it to the next level.
Great example of technology transformation in education and opening up those lines of communication with parents and taking cost out and, you know, all those great things, which we were all forced to do due to the pandemic. Is there
One of the
any other?
benefits.
Yeah.
So I remember like many years ago, I think it was in the middle of 2019, there is like a research from IDC that they were estimating the investment for digital transformation between 2019 and 2025 in $7 trillion. So all the companies combined, all the investment in digital transformation, $7 trillion. There is an update for that report that with the pandemic, we will be using all that money, you know, in half of the time. So, and I think that we will be doubling that money. So I am expecting that for 2025, we will be investing like 14 or 15 or I don't know, maybe more $1 trillion in digital transformation. And that is a trend. You know, I love to have in-person meetings and face-to-face meetings, but like going back to Paul, I think that we can be more efficient if we can have a Zoom call, you know, with New York, you know, in the morning and with, you know, London in the afternoon or, you know, either way. So, but, you know, it's something that we cannot stop the use of technology for improving, you know, efficiencies or creating new business models. I think that we are living in, it's like, you know, you do, you know, innovate or you improve your process of your technology or you will disappear. You know, we have many cases like, you know, Kodak, Globbuster, Sears, and the list go on and on. So, you know, have been replaced with Tesla, Uber, you know, so those companies didn't exist like 10, 15 years ago. So, and we can apply that to our, you know, to our business. But I think that we need to be all thinking on, you know, how digital transformation and technology can help my business.
Yeah.
And I just final comment here, building on what Paul just was talking about. I think one of the things that the tools that we now have, not only is it improving the lifestyle, it reminds me of a business that I was involved with in the capital equipment space. Global market, we had a sales force traveling the globe, located in international markets, and then they all got told stay home. And by the way, make your numbers, right? So it required a complete mind shift change. And this was a sales force that was used to two things, right? You got to get out there, you got to wine and dine the customer, and you got to be able to show these big machines to them. Now, what we saw coming out of the pandemic was greater worker satisfaction, because you know what, spending those 12 hours on a plane to fly to the middle of, you know, the next continent takes a toll. But also we were better able to actually drive data capture and measure how people were spending the time in actually generating qualified leads and closing on those leads. And then utilizing in that instance some simple tools like video to show how the machine works, and FedEx to ship a few samples back and forth. But I do think the pandemic has allowed many businesses to be more focused on data capture and measuring sales force effectiveness. And to me, that's kind of 1.0. There's a lot more opportunities to take a pragmatic approach to digital marketing and measuring the effectiveness of your sales force and digital campaigns as well. But fully agree with Paul.
I love that category so much. And as a career CMO, you know, staying on top of these technologies, things are knowable. Not only, you know, everything is knowable now, then we have all this data, as you were mentioning, Gerson, and now it's time to be able to interpret it and provide some good analysis and optimize that. And so it's really exciting, the tools that are starting to do that. And I think that is one of the benefits and things that excites me most about where we've gone because of the pandemic. So let's just leave off with one more one more question here, and also if you could indicate how people stay in touch with you, and then let's open it up to questions. So please, those of you who've joined us today, feel free to pop a question into the chat, and we will get to that. But if you could leave a little bit of advice in terms of the digital transformation journey and where to go with value creation, can you give a little advice to the audience as to where and how to step into it? Or you take it away, but this audience could use a little bit of expert insight into what steps should they be taking.
Well, I can jump in and start.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I'm gonna bring my angle and perspective into this.
Great.
What we do and what I've done for many years, even when running and turning around companies, growing businesses, is I tend to be a data hound and an analytics hound. Some of this came from my training at Bain and Company, but I like to really drill down to bedrock of what's really going on in the market. What are customer needs? What are the trends in the marketplace? What can you do better than anyone else? What's working and what's not working? And to me, that's where it starts. As we've talked about many times, you have to understand your customer needs and what's possible. So number one, I would say, bring in outside experts because they have the perspective. I love, that's one of the things that attracted me to Making Sense is their whole discovery process, because they will do that before they jump in. They'll help you understand what's really going on in the marketplace, especially from a technology perspective. But track what's really going on, really get the data and measure, as Gerson was saying, get the data, understand what's really going on in your business. You got to start there. There's a new company that I've told you about, Nicole, we just talked about yesterday, but a company called Premonio. They have this software that does somewhat Gerson was talking about, which is it allows you to gather a top-down view by pulling information from your marketing system, Salesforce systems, and so forth, but then has a top-down view to understand by lead source, by product, by sales stage, what's working, what's not working, and then to track that on a monthly basis and be able to do course corrections right away. And so it might be that you do decide to launch a new product, you need to track what's working and what's not working and make sure that you understand how much of this is a product definition issue or product market fit issue, or if it's you're just not getting enough leads or you're not selling it right or so forth. So make sure you approach this, I think, in understanding the context and then and your customer needs, and then tracking your progress towards that objective.
Great, thank you. How about you, Cesar?
So
how about some advice for the audience?
Well, I think that, again, I go back to, I don't want to build software, just for the idea to build software. I think that we need to be smart and to use the resources when it really makes sense. So I love our approach to, using our discovery phase to evaluate what is possible. We have, a lot of technology today that we can use, like cloud, AI, big data, mobile. So we can use all of that, but I think that we need to be smart and use it, on that rule, the 80-20. We need to be able to build that 20% with less resources and get the bigger ROI for the investment. So, I think that the discovery phase, again, is a small assignment, is a small investment that many companies can afford, and it will give you an idea what is the potential, I love our approach because, we are able to even put together a prototype, something that even we can present, the company can present to the board, and they can put together a case with the value creation. So that is what I would highly recommend.
Great. Gerson, how about some advice?
Two comments on this. One, first and foremost, you don't have to be a techno wizard, but you have to recognize what your gaps are and what you don't know. on the issue and bring along the right advisor. And look, I think in this day and age, you always get the offer to do technology diligence, right? And we're talking about going beyond figuring out hardware and software capabilities and gaps and the technology pathway for the business. This is about sort of where can you create new business opportunities, and that's a different skill set. So you got to bring in the right advisor, like Making Sense, to work with you at the right point in time within your diligence and implementation phase. The second piece I'll say is learn. I mean, the amount of available information that is out there to have a basic understanding of the tools that are available is a click away. I mean, Paul mentioned this tool. I immediately wrote it down. I'll go find some YouTube video that was probably pulled together by their marketing department or some 16-year-old whiz kid who, could at least give me a rudimentary understanding of the technology capabilities and then think through the potential applications for our portfolio companies. That's available to any practitioner, any investor to at least understand what is out there and getting up to speed on that knowledge curve.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Can you please let everyone know what's the best way to reach you? Gerson?
I guess the best way, best way is to go up on our website, and I just threw it up there on the screen here for anyone that wants to take a look, sabacapitalpartners.com, and then you can click through and see any of my partners via LinkedIn from there on.
Fantastic. Paul, how do we stay in touch with you?
Well, I'm not quick enough to add it to my picture there. So,
that is a high tech, Gerson.
Digital marketing.
Wow.
Yes, I have to work with experts to use technology, but no, I would just say use my email address, pwhite@muirequity.com. So MUIR equity.com is the best way to get in hold of me.
Great. And Cesar, what's the best way to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, our website, makingsense.com, or you can send me an email at cDOnofrio@makingsense.com, or you can search for my profile in LinkedIn and send me a message, and I will respond to that. So
great. And staying in touch with me, just go to Outfront Solutions. It's www.outfront.solutions, no .com. One of those fancy domains, or LinkedIn is a good way to stay in touch as well. So we did have a quick question that I saw come in a little bit around cybersecurity. And so kind of, since going digital opens the doors to cybersecurity, and we've all seen a lot of breaches and issues in the news lately. How should companies be approaching this?
Well, I'll give a very quick answer. I've been involved in security for 30 years now. And the first answer is you're already vulnerable in ways that you don't even realize. And so everyone definitely needs to go have experts come in, examine the way they're doing things. I could give you so many stories of vulnerabilities that you just would not imagine that you have now. And then once you establish that baseline, then as you bring in partners, technology partners, they're usually very aware of how technology, needs to be secure, to be made secure when it's implemented. But you can also continue to leverage, technology, cybersecurity experts out there to help you through that. It's critical to do, believe me.
Yeah, and I saw the comment from Nita as it came up, and I think one of the key issues to be aware of as an investor is smaller, lower middle market companies. They don't really have a budget. They don't have the scale, right? But an attack, and even beyond transforming them in the ways we've been talking about, just normal day-to-day business, and whether it's ransomware or something even more nefarious, could really put that business on its knees, right? And if you're a major pipeline provider and you get asked for $5 million, it's embarrassing if it ends up in the Wall Street Journal, but you'll be fine. If you're a business that's generating 3 million of EBITDA and you're being held up for $2 million, that's crushing. So fundamentally, even before digital transformation, you have to take a look at things like penetration testing and evaluate what the capabilities are of the business. But then I know Cesar can jump in here and talk about then the tools that you are implementing, making sure they have the latest security protocols and capabilities, and you as the investor and as a board member with a fiduciary responsibility, making sure that you're aware of what the vendor capabilities are for any software or hardware that you're using in the business.
Yeah, so from my point of view, I saw many cases that people think that cloud is not secure, and believe me, having your software in Amazon or Google or Microsoft is a lot more secure than having on your own data center. So that is first of all. And then, yeah, we have a group of security. We have experience working for system for first responders, the police, talking with the FBI database. So we have a strong group that work on the security, as well as healthcare and PCI, that is the compliance for the payment system. So from the software point of view, we have experts that can help you with the security concerns.
And there was a good message that was just put up on the chat that I agree with, which is you need to go get cybersecurity insurance, liability insurance, and going through that process will help you understand what gaps you have, and then you can get them addressed. And there are multiple layers of experts in these situations. We've had companies that were held hostage, and you bring in literally hostage negotiators who have worked with these, institutionalized hackers. So it's good to start working with experts on this.
Yeah.
Great insights. Thanks for your backgrounds there. Are there any other questions that we have from the audience? Happy to jump in on any other topics. Great. Well, thank you so much. We have 1 minute to spare. Thank you everyone for joining us today in our discussions around digital transformation before, during, and after M&A. And thank you once again to ACG San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and New York for hosting us. This session has been recorded, so we will be sending it around to all of you as well. So thank you again for everyone. And thank you so much to my panelists today.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you guys so much. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you, Taylor.